Thank you. Down to last couple of questions here, and we'll let you guys off the hook. But I have somebody who's interested in knowing what it was like to work together across the country. Can you tell us a little bit about your experience?
Yeah, sure. It was not quite herding cats, but pretty close. You're great cats. So I would say overall the spirit was positive. Generally, it was easy. The collaboration was quite good. Remembering, though, that we had offices at different levels and different capacities. So as the coordinating office, we had some expertise in-house. We've done this before, so we were able to provide key documents to help everybody else. And everybody else helped each other as well. So generally, I would say the experience was positive. Now, as a classic Auditor General thing, we are going to be doing a very formal lessons learned, which is something that Auditors Generals encourage departments to do, and we do it ourselves. So we will be having an organization come in and interview everybody involved and providing us with lessons learned so that when we do this again, say in 2023 or 24, we will be able to learn from the good things that we did and any of the things that we can improve. Anybody else want to add?
Maybe just to add that in some ways working collaboratively makes the audit process a bit more difficult, or it takes longer to do the work. But on the other hand, I think we sort of fed off each other in that when one jurisdiction would ask a sort of a different or off-the-wall question that the others hadn't thought about, it sometimes gave us pause and made us go back to look at our individual audit work and see if maybe we had fully addressed that particular question or that particular issue in an inadequate way. So I think maybe sort of that interplay between audit offices was helpful in terms of making individual audit products that much better. So I think it was a net gain, even though it was a lot of work.
Michael?
I would add that when we started this 18 months ago, I had a full head of hair like Julie and Carol, but now I don't. So that should be a sign. No, not really. Two key things that are important to me from this. One is just, sort of putting on my Nova Scotian and Canadian hat is to say, I'm now in a small office. I mean, we are an Auditor General's office of 35 people, one of the smaller ones in the country. I came from an office, I spent 25 years with the Auditor General of Canada with some 600 people. To me, it didn't matter because the issue was so important, like climate change. It crosses the whole country. It's important to us all. And while we may be a small jurisdiction in Nova Scotia in terms of our office or in terms of the number of people we have, certainly being on the Atlantic Ocean, climate change is very important to us. So this issue to me was that important that we had to find a way. The other thing is that it demonstrated to the people in smaller audit offices and the legislative audit community that we can work, with bigger offices, and that it can be a two-way street where our folks can learn from others, but also some bigger offices can learn some of the economies of approach that smaller offices have in terms of being able to get things done. And coming from Atlantic Canada, where all of the audit offices are smaller, I found it was important for all of us and our teams to be able to see that and then to build lasting relationships so that environmental matters are an issue that are on our mind, even as we finish these audits and we move on to other things. And I think we're going to benefit from that in Atlantic Canada.
Carol?
So, thank you. And I think there are a number of dimensions to where we were able to both share and contribute, but also learn. And there was the level of the Auditors General themselves, and a group of us were part of a small committee to discuss some of the matters that came up. And you learn a lot about what's going on in other jurisdictions in other ways. And Michael, I'll throw out kudos to you. You do a lot of great work on communicating the results of your audits in Nova Scotia. And on the next level, I'd say, the staff that were working on the audit itself and developing the framework for the audit and then working it through, and then at the tail end working on the final report. I'll speak for them, it's been a great opportunity for them to again both share and learn in the process. And as we go forward, I think there are going to be a huge number of benefits to seeing how we can use parts of the model to apply them to other audits. I'm not sure that any of us are ready tomorrow to get that report out again. We'll need a little bit of healing time, and then we'll be ready to go again.
Yeah, what I can say, as I know we're wrapping up, is that I've been working in the area of environment and sustainability for 30 odd years, more than that, both in the government, in the private sector, in civil society, and now as an auditor. And I did send everybody an email at one point just thanking everybody for their contribution to this really important and significant issue. And one of the lines I used at the end is that future generations, this is important for future generations. And so to the staff of all your audit offices, recognize that this work was really important, historic, and future generations will thank all of you.
Thank you. As we're wrapping up here, we're down to about our last few minutes. I'm going to ask each one of you quickly to give us a few last parting words. What's your big takeaway on all this?
Michael, do you want to start?
Oh, sure. Okay. So firstly, thank you to everybody. And I think, what the two main takeaways I take out of all of this work is the great story that is told in terms of getting a sense of where we have been across the country. So what has happened to get us to where we are and where do we currently stand? But even more importantly, I think, is what that means for the future. And I think, Julie referred to it in her opening, and I think it really is the key as to say what happens now. I like to say, on all of our audits here in Nova Scotia that, that's great that we did this audit, we made these recommendations, or we came up with things, and government may have accepted them, but that is really only the starting point, and is really, what really is important is what comes through after that and the follow-up after that. So that's why it's important here, I know in Nova Scotia, that we'll be back in 2 years to follow up the commitments that the government has made here in Nova Scotia to our recommendations, the three of them. So I look forward to that as well. But mainly I want to say it was an exciting process. It was a very worthwhile process, and I'm even closer to my colleagues today than I was 18 months ago. And that's a good thing. Thank you.
Carol?
So yes, thank you to everybody and for leading us through this, Julie, to you and your team. And as Michael pointed out, and there's that starting point that it's now, we actually also look to the process that that the whole audit undertook in British Columbia. We were working with 6 ministries, so it was a complex undertaking from coordinating it from that perspective. But it was certainly a very positive experience between our staff and the staff of those ministries, and we'll be watching that going forward. We speak truth to power, but we also appreciate that the change can only really take place by those public servants who are committed to making that happen. And so we work very carefully to maintain our independence, but at the same time to appreciate that we can help them with the facts that we've derived, the way that we bring it together. It will be going to a Public Accounts Committee meeting as well in British Columbia, not this week. This week they're covering grizzly bear management and rural nursing at our Public Accounts Committee meeting, but climate change, I believe, is the next one on the list. And so it's a real collaborative effort in seeing change happen amongst the elected officials, the public service, and then the audit function. So this has been a fabulous extension of that as you add in the complication of all of the various jurisdictions. So thank you for allowing us to participate.
A couple of minutes.
And I think maybe just to add to that, Julie, from the perspective of those of us here at the office that audit the territories, we're used to auditing social programs, health, education, income support, child and family services, all which are very serious issues in the north that require attention. I think what my colleagues and myself took from these 3 audits we did in the territories related to climate change is just the how critical the issues are and how urgent the issues are, and how it's important that territorial governments act now in order to address the impacts of climate change for a multitude of reasons. But in particular for those individuals living in remote, isolated communities, often Indigenous communities who are at the forefront of dealing with climate change. I think they would say it's about time that maybe the rest of us understood what it is that they're dealing with. And I know, having spoken to several MLAs in the Northwest Territories that represent Indigenous communities and who are Indigenous, when we had our standing committee hearing in Yellowknife in January on our audit in the Northwest Territories, the sentiment they expressed was it's about time that everybody took this issue seriously. So I think for we auditors in the office here that do the Northern audits, I think that was the biggest takeaway.
I feel like I've already made my final statements, but so on behalf of all of us, thank you very much to all the participants. This is the first time we've ever done anything like this. If you have any feedback, please provide it to us. I'm not sure the mechanism, but you can always send the Office of the Auditor General of Canada an email. Tell us whether you liked it, whether we should do this more often, etc. So thank you to everyone for participating and for the whole team here, all your teams across the country. Thank you. Merci.